Jack Harmon had barely stepped out onto the quiet suburban street with Max, his loyal German shepherd, when the faint smell of smoke pricked his senses. The morning air was crisp, birds chirped in the trees, and the neighborhood seemed serene, almost deceptively calm. But then a flicker of orange caught his eye through the trees, a thin wisp of smoke curling upward, quickly followed by a growing glow that reflected off the windows of a modest two-story house. Jack's instincts, honed by decades of military service, kicked in instantly. His heartbeat accelerated, and he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came whenever someone's life was at risk. Without hesitation, he dropped Max's leash, grabbed the dog by the collar, and ran toward the house. As they approached, the heat hit him first, sudden and intense, forcing him to squint through the thickening smoke. Flames had begun to crawl along the siding, sending sparks into the morning sky. Jack's trained eyes scanned the windows and the partially visible interior, searching for signs of anyone trapped inside. That's when he saw her, a tiny figure near the base of the staircase, coughing violently, eyes wide with fear. She clutched at her small arms, trembling uncontrollably as the smoke thickened around her. Her small body was dwarfed by the chaos surrounding her, and Jack's heart clenched. Without thinking, he ran into the house, Max at his side, weaving through the flames and falling debris. Every step was perilous. The floor creaked under the heat, pieces of the ceiling began to fall, and the air grew thicker with smoke that made each breath a struggle. He reached the girl in seconds that felt like hours, kneeling beside her and gently lifting her into his arms. Her tiny hands gripped his soot-streaked jacket as she buried her face into his chest, shivering from both smoke and fear. Max nudged her gently, letting out a low, comforting whine, and she tentatively wrapped her small arms around his neck, finding some reassurance in the dog's calm presence. Jack adjusted his grip, shielding her as best as he could from the flames that licked the walls. Turning toward the exit, Jack felt the floorboards groan under the heat and debris rained down from above. He kept moving, taking measured, urgent steps toward the front door, while Max stayed close, alert and protective. Outside, the cool morning air hit them like a wave, and the girl gasped, coughing but alive. She clung to Max, her small arms tight around his neck, while Jack set her down gently, brushing soot from her hair and checking her for injuries. Around them, neighbors had begun to gather, their faces a mixture of fear and awe, but Jack barely noticed them. His attention was fully on the little girl, making sure she was breathing steadily, her eyes no longer wide with terror, but still shining with raw, lingering fear. For a moment, everything felt suspended, the crackle of flames behind them, the whines and barks of other frightened animals in the distance, and the weight of the morning's chaos. Then the girl whispered, her voice barely audible, "Thank you, thank you." And Jack realized that in that instant, he and Max had done exactly what they were meant to do. Protect life, no matter the danger. By the time the fire trucks roared onto the street, Jack was already sitting on the curb, sweat and soot streaking his weathered face. The little girl rested against his chest, wrapped in his jacket, her small frame trembling. As the adrenaline of the escape slowly ebbed, Max sat at Jack's side, alert yet calm, his sharp ears twitching at every distant crackle of fire and distant shouts from firefighters coordinating hoses and ladders. The heat from the blaze still radiated from the house, curling smoke and ash around them, but here on the curb, they were in a fragile, temporary safety. The girl's sobs began to subside, replaced by small hiccups and quiet sniffles. She peeked up at Max with wide, uncertain eyes, brushing a sooty strand of hair from her face. Are you my friend?" she whispered, voice trembling. Max responded with a gentle nudge of his nose, a small, reassuring whine, and the girl's lips curled into a tentative smile. Jack's voice was calm and steady as he spoke softly to her, explaining that the firemen were putting out the flames, and that everything would be okay now. He encouraged her to take slow breaths, modeling each one as he inhaled and exhaled deeply, feeling the cool morning air fill his lungs. The neighbors had begun to gather, drawn by the roar of the fire and the sight of Jack carrying a soot-covered child from the inferno. Some offered blankets, which Jack wrapped carefully around her small shoulders, tucking her into the warmth of his jacket underneath. Others brought bottles of water, helping her sip slowly to soothe her dry throat. She accepted a bottle from a kindly, elderly woman, her hands shaking slightly as she clutched it. Jack kept his arm around her, ensuring she didn't lose her balance or wander too close to the still smoldering house. He noticed the way Max sat protectively, ears perked, eyes never leaving her face, as if he understood the gravity of the morning and the girl's fragile state. Time seemed to stretch indefinitely, the chaos of the fire now contrasted by the fragile calm around the curb. Jack's mind wandered briefly to his own family, long gone, and he felt a pang of longing, but the girl in his arms grounded him in the present. He whispered small reassurances to her, telling her how brave she was, how she had stayed calm despite the smoke and the heat. She listened intently, clinging to his jacket, occasionally pressing her face against Max's fur. Finally, she murmured, "My mummy, she's at work." Jack's heart clenched with empathy, understanding the fear of a child separated from her parent in a crisis. He told her that her mother would be here soon, his words a soft promise to keep her calm. Max leaned into her slightly, as if to confirm Jack's assurance, and the girl nestled closer, finding comfort in the steady presence of both the veteran and the dog. Around them, the world felt a little safer, as though the courage of a man and the loyalty of a dog had created a fragile bubble of protection in the midst of disaster. Even with the smoke still rising from the charred house, Jack allowed himself a small breath of relief. The little girl was alive, safe, and for the moment, he and Max had fulfilled the duty that came naturally to them, protecting those who could not protect themselves. Hours passed, the sky gradually shifting from the bright intensity of late morning to the softer hues of afternoon. As firefighters continued to battle the remnants of the blaze, Jack sat on the curb, Max lying at his feet, ears alert yet relaxed. The little girl had drifted into a light, exhausted sleep against his shoulder, soot and smoke still clinging faintly to her hair, but her breathing steady and even. Neighbors whispered among themselves, still awed by the scene, occasionally glancing at the small figure in Jack's arms and the steadfast dog who had stood by him without hesitation. Every so often, the girl stirred, murmuring something unintelligible, before nestling back into the warmth of Jack's jacket. And then the sudden, commanding hum of a sleek black SUV's engine broke the fragile quiet. The vehicle pulled smoothly to the curb, its polished surface gleaming even in the muted afternoon light, and a sharply dressed woman stepped out. Her heels clicked on the asphalt with precision, matching the briskness of her stride as she moved toward the gathering crowd. Jack's attention shifted immediately. There was something in her presence that exuded authority, confidence, and urgency all at once. Her hair was perfectly styled, her tailored suit immaculate despite the chaos surrounding her, and her eyes were fixed intently on the child in his arms. The little girl stirred at the sound, blinking sleepily, and then recognized the woman. She squirmed slightly, murmuring, "Mommy," and Jack gently adjusted his hold, helping her lift her head so she could see. The woman's eyes filled with immediate recognition, and without a word, she rushed forward. Arms outstretched, she wrapped the little girl tightly against her chest, tears welling and spilling freely down her cheeks. "I was so worried. I thought I'd lost you." Her voice wavered between panic and relief, but it was the kind of heartfelt emotion only a parent could feel in such a moment. Jack stepped back slightly, watching the reunion with a quiet sense of fulfillment. The woman's gratitude and relief radiated so powerfully that it almost left him breathless. She finally noticed him, her gaze scanning the soot-covered veteran and the loyal dog still sitting patiently by his side. Her eyes widened in recognition as understanding dawned. This man and his dog had risked their lives to save hers. The gravity of the situation settled in, and she extended a trembling hand. I don't even know how to thank you," she said, voice thick with emotion, as she shook his hand firmly. Jack shook his head, brushing off the words with a modest, almost habitual gesture. "It's okay. I'm just glad she's safe." He glanced down at Max, who wagged his tail slightly, acknowledging the mother's presence with a low, respectful whine. The little girl peeked out from her mother's embrace, her small hand reaching back toward Max, as if to reassure herself that the heroic dog was still there, still loyal, still protective. The woman, Claire Bennett, finally looked back at Jack, fully, the weight of the day reflected in her eyes. She nodded slowly, a mixture of awe, relief, and gratitude written across her face. In that moment, amidst the haze of smoke, the lingering scent of charred wood, and the quiet murmurs of the gathering crowd, a silent understanding passed between them. This was a life saved, a bond forged, and a debt of gratitude. that words alone could never fully express. The little girl clung to both her mother and Max, and Jack realized, in that fleeting but powerful instant, that heroism was not about medals or recognition. It was about being there when it mattered most. Once the immediate chaos had begun to settle, Claire Bennett led Jack and Max to a quieter area at the edge of the street, away from the smoke and the crowd of onlookers. Her polished composure was replaced by a softer, almost vulnerable urgency as she turned to him, her sharp eyes glistening with gratitude. She exclaimed, her voice wavering slightly, that she could never fully express how thankful she was for what he had done. Jack listened quietly, accustomed to others praising him, but never seeking attention. Saving lives had always been its own reward, yet he sensed the sincerity in her tone, the kind of gratitude that went beyond words. Claire reached into her designer bag and withdrew a thick envelope, holding it with both hands as though it contained something sacred. "I want to do more than just thank you," she said, her voice steady but firm. Jack raised an eyebrow, mildly uncomfortable with the attention. "It's not necessary," he murmured. "I was just doing what anyone would do." But Claire shook her head, her expression resolute. "No, you did something extraordinary. You saved my daughter's life. You and Max. That deserves recognition, and I want to make sure you are taken care of as well." She handed him the envelope, and Jack felt the weight of it, both literally and figuratively. Inside was a check on an amount far beyond what he could have imagined. It was enough to cover medical bills, help rebuild the damaged house, and provide security for the girl's future. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he took it, a mixture of disbelief and humility washing over him. He glanced at Max, who had settled by his side, sensing the gravity of the moment and offering silent support. The little girl, now fully awake and clutching her mother's hand, watched curiously, her eyes wide and bright, a mixture of awe and excitement at the unexpected turn of events. Jack struggled to find the right words, feeling awkward under the magnitude of Claire's generosity. I don't know what to say," he admitted finally, his voice roughened by emotion and exhaustion. Claire smiled warmly, reaching out to gently touch his arm. "You don't need to say anything. Just knowing she's safe, that's enough for me. But this is my way of showing my gratitude in a meaningful way." For a few moments, they simply stood there, the afternoon sun casting a soft glow over the charred remnants of the house and the small group gathered on the street. Jack allowed himself a rare moment of reflection, thinking about his years of service, the missions, the dangers he had faced, and realizing that nothing had ever felt as immediate, as profoundly rewarding as this moment of saving a child. Max nudged the little girl gently, eliciting a small giggle as she patted his head, and Jack smiled despite himself. Finally, he nodded, accepting both the check and the gesture, feeling a mix of humility and quiet pride. Claire's insistence had been unwavering, but it was clear that her generosity was not about reward. It was about honor, recognition, and the unspoken understanding that some acts of heroism deserved to be acknowledged. The little girl bounced slightly on her mother's hip, Max wagged his tail, and Jack felt a sense of closure and profound satisfaction and awareness that sometimes courage and loyalty could change lives in ways nothing else could. The bond between veteran, dog, child, and grateful parent had been cemented forever in the aftermath of a single, extraordinary morning. Weeks later, the charred remains of the house had been replaced with fresh paint, new siding, and a rebuilt interior that gleamed with the pride of careful craftsmanship. Jack Harmon found himself invited to the newly restored home, a formal gesture from Claire Bennett, though he suspected it was more about gratitude than ceremony. Max bounded ahead, through the freshly manicured yard, tail wagging furiously as the little girl ran to greet him, squealing with delight. The bond formed in the terror of the fire had only deepened. She laughed freely now, unburdened by fear, her small hands brushing through Max's fur as he playfully circled her. Jack's heart warmed at the sight, a rare smile spreading across his soot-stained, weathered face. Claire met him at the door, no longer the austere CEO, but a mother radiating relief and appreciation. Her suit had been replaced with casual attire, soft colors that softened her authoritative presence, and her smile carried the weight of genuine gratitude. "I'm so glad you came," she said warmly, ushering him inside. The interior was bright and welcoming, filled with subtle touches of elegance that hinted at Claire's professional success. Yet the home now had a warmth it had lacked before the fire. Jack noticed little drawings on the walls, scribbled by the girl during her recovery, evidence of resilience and the innocence that had survived the blaze. Dinner was a simple affair, but laughter filled the air as the little girl told stories of her adventures with Max and the heroic rescue. Jack listened, occasionally interjecting with a dry, modest comment that elicited giggles from the child. Max lay nearby, contentedly chewing on a toy, his watchful eyes still alert to the family he had come to protect. Claire glanced at Jack, from time to time, her expression a mixture of admiration and gratitude, and he felt an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. She had made the check and the offer to help, but this shared moment of calm and joy was perhaps the truest form of thanks. After dinner, Claire suggested they step out into the backyard. The sky had darkened into a rich twilight, stars beginning to pepper the horizon. Jack leaned against the railing, Max at his side, watching the little girl chase fireflies with Cliff. Claire approached, offering him a glass of water, and standing beside him quietly. "You know," she said softly, "it's not just about saving her life. You gave her confidence, security, and a memory she'll carry forever. You and Max, he are her heroes." Jack shook his head, his usual modesty holding firm, but the warmth in her words resonated. Max barked softly, as if affirming the sentiment. The evening lingered, a calm after weeks of stress and chaos. Jack realized that heroism was not measured by accolades or public recognition. It was measured in moments like this, in the quiet satisfaction of knowing lives had been changed for the better. He watched the little girl laugh, free and unafraid, Max dancing around her, and felt a rare peace settle over him. Claire joined him, her hand briefly touching his in a gesture of friendship and respect. In that serene backyard, under the vast, starlit sky, the bonds of courage, loyalty, and gratitude intertwined, forming a connection that would endure far beyond the memory of the fire. Jack knew that sometimes the simplest rewards, a smile, a hug, a shared moment, were the most profound of all.